Right. Hello, everyone. I'm Amanda with Warwick's, and thank you for joining this special live or in the future recorded for posterity event with Maressa Brown in conversation with Celeste Brooks and with April Elliott Kent. And this is an event entitled Thriving During Mercury Retrograde, not just surviving. And we are very excited. I am very excited because I am constantly shaking my fist at Mercury whenever anything happens at work, especially. I've heard before that it was explained to me that retrogrades are good times to reassess or reframe things. And it's so cool that we can have this event during what feels like a pretty brutal Mercury retrograde.
Yep.
Really quickly, I'll mention thank you for being here. I'm curious where folks are all from. If you want to say in the chat where you're beaming in from. Warwick's is in San Diego, a little bit north of the city proper, and we are the oldest continuously family-owned and operated bookstore in the U.S.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, not the oldest, but the oldest that has stayed in the same family for the longest time. And Nancy Warwick is the 4th generation owner. And we're super happy to be able to do events like this. The pandemic hit and we decided to start virtual events. And now we get to have fantastic events like this with authors that might not make it to San Diego otherwise through internet magic. Another San Diegan is here. Thank you for being here. Gilbert, Arizona, rad.
Hello, Arizona. Hello, New Jersey.
Wow.
This is so fun.
Yeah.
Rachel's actually the editor of Mercury Magic. She's my editor.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay. Hi, Rachel.
So I will say we ship books anywhere to the 48 contiguous states. So please consider purchasing Mercury Magic through Warwick's to support Maressa and also the bookstore, or from your favorite local bookstore too, wherever fine books are sold. I'll put the link to the book in the chat after I'm done babbling. I'm going to introduce these authors and let them go. So Maressa Brown is a Los Angeles-based journalist and astrologer who has written several parenting, astrology, pop culture, and general lifestyle content for nearly 2 decades. She's a regular contributor to Parents Magazine, resident astrologer for InStyle and Shape, and senior editor for Care.com. Her writing has also appeared in the Washington Post and on What to Expect Digital, popsugar.com, horoscope.com, astrology.com, and more. And a graduate of Emerson College, Brown is a member of the International Society for Astrological Research, the Authors Guild, and the American Society of Journalists and Authors. She is also the author of Raising Baby by the Stars, A New Parent's Guide to Astrology, which is also available on audiobook as read by her, that was just mentioned. We also welcome her in conversation partners, April Elliott Kent and Celeste Brooks. April Elliott Kent is a professional astrologer in San Diego, and she is the author of Astrological Transits, The Essential Guide to Practical Astrology, and The Star Guide to Weddings. Her astrological writing has appeared in the Mountain Astrologer magazine and in Llewellyn's Sun Sign, Moon Sign, and Sabbats.
I think Sabbats.
And I've had people correct my pronunciation.
I don't have a clue, so your way is good with me.
April's Big Sky Astrology podcast is new every week, and her website is bigskyAstrology.com. It has welcomed visitors since 2000. And Celeste Brooks is a predictive astrologer, life coach, and public speaker. Her offerings include classes, coaching packages, corporate events, and readings. She also helps people find unknown birth times through chart rectification, which I think is one of the most fascinating astrological realms, personally.
Yes, I'm going to send people to you, Celeste. I got lots
please do.
Basically like an astrological detective. Her podcast, Celestial Insights, offers weekly guidance. She is a board member of the Organization of Professional Astrology and a faculty member of Kepler College. Celeste lectures internationally at astrology conferences before transitioning into astrology full-time. She had a successful sales and marketing career spanning over 25 years at Fortune 500 companies. And her website is astrologybyceleste.com. Okay, so without further ado, time for these three amazing women to talk. You feel free to use the chat or the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen if you have questions, and then I'll pop back on at about 15 to the next hour to bring those questions to these women. All right, thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Oh. Maressa,
Yay.
you're our author. Take the lead. We will follow your lead.
Okay, well, I just thank you so much for being here with me today. Very excited to celebrate Mercury Magic, even though we're all in want to pull your hair out Mercury retrograde mode.
Yes.
I've been trying to reassure people. Yeah, there is magic still. Don't worry. We're just in an exceptionally challenging moment with the full moon having just happened yesterday. And as we were talking in the green room, this was a particularly challenging chart. This is full moon yesterday, and we're still feeling the effects of it. And as we're going to be getting into, this Mercury retrograde is perhaps a little more amplified because it began in Virgo, a sign that Mercury rules. So that's something that we can discuss a little bit, although it has moved back into Leo, hence lion earrings.
Yay.
And I'm just so excited to be here with the two of you, April. We were going to talk maybe a little bit about how we all know each other. I'll start out by mentioning that April is my mentor, and we've known each other quite a long time now. It's wild to think. I think it's over 10 years, possibly 11 or 12 years. And I haven't told you this, April, but I kind of like teased it, I think, in an email, but I had like a really fun Mercury retrograde moment related to our relationship recently.
Yeah.
I'm organizing my second bedroom and going through old papers and notes and notebooks. And I came across the actual notes I took during our first reading together, the first reading you did for me.
Oh my gosh. I bet that was wild.
It is wild. Like, well, I'll show you when we meet next.
Your life would be so different now. I didn't know I did an actual reading I remember choosing a wedding date for you. That's the first thing I remember.
Yep. But I actually did book a reading with you. And because I was going through kind of a rough patch in my former life.
Yeah.
And you called the month and year that I would move to LA.
Oh, I feel smart.
I mean, I don't think you are. I don't think you said necessarily, that's not how astrology works, everybody. You don't necessarily shouldn't, April wasn't like, you're going to move to LA on this month and day or whatever. But
it has been foretold.
Yeah, you definitely pointed to, I believe it was an eclipse related.
Oh, yeah, those are good for moves. But how did you find me? Did you see my website or something? Or
that's a shout out to Stu Brown. My
father
found you.
Oh,
yeah.
Dad.
Yeah, he said, I think you would enjoy her because her writing is beautiful and she's very focused on writing, it seems, as an astrologer as well.
Which is much your bag. Yeah.
Like I always tell people when they say, oh, do you do readings? I do. I want people to know that I can and I do. But it's not a main focus for me because I've been writing 2 books recently and I write for a lot of publications, as Amanda noted. So yeah, it's harder for me to get those in, but shout out to April. And then Celeste and I know each other through social media world and the astrologer community. And I very much value her down to earth mundane astrology approach to discussing how just literal astrology is. So we'll get into that a little bit more too. So I can throw it to either of you also to talk about, how we all know each other.
Well, I mean,
I said April too, because I went to April for mentoring because I loved her style and her podcast and her book. So yeah, we have that in common.
Oh, that's sweet. And it's making me feel slightly old. but that's okay.
You should just feel special.
I
'Cause you're
do.
such a brilliant
Well,
astrologer.
where's everybody's Mercury in their own charts? What are your Mercury signs and so
Mine is
forth?
Mercury
Go
in
ahead.
Taurus in the 11th house,
Nice.
trine Pluto and Virgo in the 3rd house.
All right.
Wow. Oh, I
That's
like
a
that.
I'm
powerful
an
Mercury.
investigative reporter in my own mind.
Yes. Well, no wonder you like rectification, because
Mhm.
it's like putting together a puzzle or something, I think.
Mhm.
So
Oh, I love that.
yeah. Where's yours, Marissa?
Mine is in the 2nd house. It's 29 degrees Virgo. Retrograde.
That is the most Virgo-ish Mercury of all.
I have retrograde too.
Right?
Is
Right?
yours
It's like,
retrograde?
Mhm.
Oh, I'll be darned. What do you think
So
about Mercury retrograde in your birth chart? I know you talk about it in the book, Maressa.
I do. I think it's a superpower. That's the way I
think
frame it in the
so.
book, because your lesson in this life is to work on your communication and perfect it and be a little bit different, perhaps. So you feel like you speak a different language and you second guess yourself sometimes, but that's something you are meant to work through in order to then support other people in that realm.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
What
Yeah.
do you
and
think,
it's a good-
Celeste? Does that
I think
resonate for
so.
you?
And it's a good reminder that people around you don't necessarily know what you're thinking unless you tell them when you have Mercury retrograde, because people can feel like, what are they thinking about? Yeah. So,
Oh, that's
yeah.
interesting.
Although sometimes I have trouble teasing out how I experience it with the second guessing and the worrying and whatever, like from the Virgo,
The Virgo part.
merely having Mercury and Virgo can cause that. But then having it natally retrograde adds another layer of that. But I do feel like that's sort of, as a natal retrograde person, that it's been a life journey. Like I joined speech team in high school, and that was not something that I anticipated doing. I kind of fell into it, and I thought it was like I thought, oh, this is a way to, it's kind of like why you join a sorority, I guess. Like I thought, wow, there's a lot of people who are very bonded in this group, and I would like to make friends this way. And they're also in newspaper, and they also do yearbook and theater, and those are my things. But I was terrified of public speaking. So
I was
I
in
had
the
to
debate club in high school.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, but you're both so smooth in your communications. And when you guys were in school, though, I just wonder, because when I used to have students, astrology students who had Mercury retrograde, they were the ones that would sit there and for weeks, I could see just blank expressions. They could not really grasp what was going on. The minute Mercury turned retrograde in the sky, bang, the penny dropped.
Yes.
Is that way for you guys?
Not for me.
Have you
I
noticed,
don't
we were
think.
talking
I
about this, I
think
think, Celeste, when we did our live, right? Did we talk about, a theory I float, I think in the book, and that I like to talk about in regard to this, is that at least personally, I've noticed I can get into a better flow with my writing during retrograde periods.
yes.
And sometimes I also feel more articulate, like you're talking about, April.
Yeah,
It
that
feels
you're
like,
just
and I
on track.
explain it in the book, it's like, it's the world is more in sync with your language as a natal retrograde person.
I agree
So
with
you're
that.
able to, oh, I'm here now. And people are able to pick up on me better.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But to April's point, I'd have to go back and look actually, because I remember when I first started studying astrology, there were some concepts that took me a while to get, but I don't know if it was a retrograde that brought them into light or not. So I shouldn't say no.
Well, I
Maybe
mean,
that's exactly what happened, and I just don't
sometimes it's just
realize it.
astrology being hard, and being so
Yes.
complicated. So we probably have
think,
all had that experience with some form of astrology.
Yeah.
I
What's
was
your
say, as also
Mercury,
like,
April?
Oh, I've got
yeah.
Mercury in Leo
Mhm.
in the 9th house, and it's opposed Saturn and Jupiter.
No wonder you're such a prolific writer.
Well, I mean, but you know, the Saturn thing is good because it makes you really disciplined to have Mercury in an aspect with Saturn, but it's also, it can make you feel very blocked, and it just depends on the day. So I have a lot of Mercury aspects in my chart, and some of them are very good. And it's in, you know, a very creative sign. Leo's pretty creative, and the ninth house. So I published books, which I never intended to do. But it just kind of worked out. So, and it rules my moon. I have the moon in Gemini. So
Yes,
I
and you
like
have some
that
Virgo
Mercury.
too, right, April?
I have some Virgo stuff. I have Mars and Jupiter, no, Mars and Pluto in the midheaven, all in Virgo.
Yeah,
Not a bit
that's very
much, really.
hardworking too.
Yeah.
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 The Leo, I feel like your Mercury in Leo also manifests as, and something else that I was drawn to about you initially is just how, and both of you really, optimistic, or, you know, pragmatic and optimistic. The Leo is the optimistic. The pragmatic, I'm thinking more of you, Celeste. But I like I have both of those, of course, in my chart with my Virgo stellium and Leo stellium. And I do not have a taste for the fear mongering that goes on in regard to astrology. I really, that's what, you know, Mercury Magic was written in the vein of, you know, like, let's talk about how to think about this in a brighter, lighter, proactive way, because it's happening 3 or 4 times a year, right? For at least 3 weeks, you're feeling the effects, if not more, because of the shadow periods leading in and out of Mercury retrograde. So why not work with it instead of fearing it?
Well, what do you think of the Mercury retrograde period generally? And you wrote about it in the book. What do you feel what's our assignment while Mercury is retrograde?
I forgot who mentioned earlier, but I think it was Amanda, that, you know,
Mhm.
it's all the words, right? Rethink, revise, reflect. It's slow down. Something that I talk about a lot with Mercury retrograde when I'm writing about it is that it is increasingly, I think we're continuing to move in this direction. I wouldn't say that although, you know, mindfulness has taken off and meditation apps, etc. But I think that our modern culture is so go, 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 hustle, 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 move forward at all costs. And so it's just increasingly difficult for us to slow down and be introspective. But it's impossible to really move forward without taking the time to do that from time to time. So it's our assignment is to it might, you know, that's why it might be a struggle sometimes to slow down and prioritize self-reflection, mindfulness, looking back, tying up loose ends ahead of plowing ahead.
Do you make an effort, or do you make an effort, Celeste, to really plan or not plan specific things during Mercury retrograde for that purpose, to give yourself more space to slow
Yes,
down?
I like that energy of, I feel like it's like it gives you the opportunity to have a little mini lighten yourself up, lighten your schedule up, take your foot off the gas. Definitely not a good time to be purchasing things. Like, I want a new refrigerator, but every time I'm ready to do something, it's on the
Mercury's retrograde.
it's on the verge of a retrograde. So I'm like, it's just better not to do things like that. I love Mercury retrograde because I always find mistakes that are mistakes. Like sometimes it's like a little misspelling here, or, oh, something comes to your attention that where there is an error in communication with Mercury retrograde. So that's
Absolutely.
a bit of a gift. And you can also find lost items. That can be a positive that comes from Mercury retrograde. So if you've lost something and you give it up looking for it, maybe take a gander around and it'll just pop
Yeah,
up.
sometimes they just pop up. It's as
Right.
spontaneous as that, for sure.
Or lost treasure. I think it also bears noting, like, and I mentioned this in the book, like, we're not discounting the annoying aspects when we talk about these bright spots or these opportunities with Mercury retrograde. I want to thoroughly acknowledge it can be very irritating. And I have been very irritated, especially during this Mercury retrograde. But there's but there are lessons to be learned even in that, about your own patience and your own ability to cope with stress and frenetic energy. This one has been particularly, I feel like, very frenetic, even though the message is slow down, right? And go back and streamline your schedule, etc. Especially in Virgo, right? Streamline your daily routine. I feel like the energy has been really ratcheted up, and it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing a million things right now, even though my intention is to slow down and do less.
Well, here is somebody in the chat. DPF is saying, why is this one frenetic compared to others, this Mercury retrograde?
We were talking about this when we were doing our prep, right? We were talking about Mars and Jupiter in Gemini. That is certainly a factor.
And that's ruled by Mercury. Gemini is.
Yes, Gemini being ruled by Mercury. And also
Venus
the
and Virgo.
Virgo.
Oh, and Venus and Virgo. You're quite right.
Also ruled by Mercury.
Yeah.
Too much Mercury ruled stuff, which takes us to somebody here, Kimberly, who said, is there a such thing as too much Mercury? Well, she's a Virgo rising, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Mars, and Gemini. So what do you offer for those on Mercury overload, which is all of us right now?
You have to find room for yoga, deep breathing, something that can kind of, you're not going to ever shut off your brain, right? Like, that's not the intention. My yoga instructor never has emphasized, your purpose when you're doing those practices is not to like turn off your thoughts, more about observing your thoughts and not letting them take you on a wild chase, right?
That's my problem.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, but
you go down that rabbit hole.
Yes, getting out of your head and into your body can be like something that really is helpful for someone with all of that Mercury, like you were saying, with yoga or meditation or something, because that's
swimming. Ooh.
Oh, swimming, yes.
The opposite, the Pisces mode, for sure.
Yeah. I have been finding that very therapeutic this summer, leading into this Mercury retrograde.
This has been hard, though, with this Mercury starting out in Virgo. It's when it's in a sign it's so strong in. It's like a locomotive coming down the line. It's been very aggravating. I've been finding it in online stuff with every single system I have in my business that's based in, the cloud or whatever. Every single morning I wake up and the first email I see is something's become disconnected, or we need to do something about a plugin on your side, or I'm like, please stop. You're killing me. But that thing of kind of during Mercury retrograde, I noticed, because I was on a 4-week leave, and the Mercury retrograde started in the last week. I wouldn't have even noticed it, except my poor husband was suffering with 1,000 Mercury retrograde things. I just floated. It was so wonderful. The day I got back to work, I began to suffer, and it has continued the whole time. So it's just kind of the moral of the story, as you were saying, Maressa. It's if you're trying to be too on point and too on schedule, Mercury is a little monkey, and he'll dance around and he'll say, oh, Celeste, you need a major appliance. We have to do it now. Or something happens with your car, your computer, and you just get backed into this Mercury corner. It's so aggravating.
Yeah. And I offer in the book that when things do get irritating and out of your control, that it can help to try your best. I know it's really hard to have a sense of humor. Especially now that Mercury is moving back in Leo, I think that's a good lesson to try to hold on to. Like, do your best to just like laugh about it. I find a lot of comfort in just knowing. I say this all the time. If I didn't have the awareness of what was going on astrologically, I think I'd be a lot more frustrated. At least knowing what's going on. I think that's the Virgo, right? That's my Virgo. I really like just at least having a concrete explanation, like yesterday being the bananas day that it was, with the retrograde in full effect, and then the full moon coming in and blowing everything up. I was just like, this is just the lesson from therapy. It's temporary. It is not, this will pass,
It's a
The word this
transit. It will pass. Yeah.
exact. Yes, you say that all the time. I love that.
Yeah.
I
Well, my
always
teacher used
quote
to
you.
say that. I want to embroider it on a pillow somewhere. Because I mean, really, it's true. But it gives you that perspective, because what we tend to think when we get into a period like that is, oh no, this is the new normal. This is the way my life is now. And that's true of
Right.
so many transits and other things we look at in a chart. A Mercury retrograde, we do internalize it and take it personally sometimes. That Mercury's picking on
Mhm.
us.
And
Mm.
it can feel like that too, because it isn't like yesterday was very much an amplified day. But I think because I hear from people all the time, when is this retrograde over? Like, it feels like it goes on forever because we have the shadows and the 3 weeks where it actually is, technically retrograde. And then it happens so frequently. People are like, I thought it just ended. It's like, it really does feel that way. It did really just end. And now we're heading back into another one. But hence the case for Mercury magic.
Do you want to mention a little bit more
more?
about the Mercury shadow and exactly what that is, and the Mercury storm and stuff?
Sure,
People don't
sure.
know.
So we get into that in the book. The shadow is so Mercury moves so quickly. It's the fastest moving planet. So it can't just all of a sudden reverse course. Like, it's not like this. It's not that kind of magic.
Why not?
So, right? I know. Mercury wishes it could do that.
We sure wish.
Yeah. But it has to slow down ahead of its retrograde for a period of time before it reverses course. And when I say reverse course, we're talking about it appears to be moving backward through the ecliptic. That's all the signs, the 12 signs, from our vantage point here on Earth.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's actually, astronomers will be like, "Wah." That's not what we're talking about.
Settle down, astronomers.
Yeah, it's our perspective, and that's what astrology is all about. And it appears to be moving backward, right? And then as it goes direct and needs to then rev back up to its full speed. So then we're in a phase where it's doing that. And the advice from all of us astrologers on that is it's direct. Once it's direct, it's direct. You don't have to behave as though it's still the retrograde. Celeste can buy her fridge with a little extra caution.
We're very invested in this fridge situation for Celeste. Yeah.
Me too.
Yep. Well, I said I wasn't sure if I was going to mention this, but I'm pregnant, and that's my big retrograde thing, is that I've been dealing with a lot of baby prep and appointments and monitoring and trying to think of the best timing to acquire certain big ticket items that are perhaps very technology based, and I don't want those even sent. I don't want to order them. I don't want them sent. I don't want them anywhere near me until we get through this. Because we want them to work properly and not get lost in the mail.
And not get sent to somebody else's house or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Hey, Laura wants to know, can you tell us, both of you, all of us, I suppose, about moods and Mercury? How do they correlate?
Ooh, I like that. I guess I would say that I think you got to kind of look at where it's hitting your chart. Because perhaps if it's going back and forth over your moon is our emotional compass in our chart. So if that's the case, it could be a very emotional Mercury retrograde. That's just one piece. What do you think, April?
I think of it more as your thoughts and communication style. But like you said, the moon is mood, so more mood. So it will be more impactful if it's talking to your moon in some way. So I agree with you.
Or ruling your moon. If you
Or
have the
ruling
moon
your
in
moon.
Gemini
Yeah,
or
Gemini
Virgo.
moons and Virgo moons may
Yeah.
notice a difference.
Ooh, I like that. Yes. As
Yeah.
April
It's
can
important.
attest.
Yeah, yes. And how they communicate with each other. I mean,
Oh, wait,
yeah,
me too.
or you with your with your Virgo moon. Hello, welcome to your chart, Maressa. Yeah, it is. It's the challenge sometimes, when you have, as we do, the moon in a Mercury ruled sign, the tendency is to get out of mood altogether and start to try to think it through instead of really feeling it. So, and then there are other times the feelings are just completely out there on their own. It's hard to articulate them or whatever. So, yeah, I guess it's that connection with Mercury and the moon, or Mercury in Cancer, say, which is ruled by the moon, or if you have
Oh,
Mercury
right,
in the
right.
fourth house or something ruled by
Sure.
the moon.
Also, how about Mercury retrograde affecting your Mars? Because there's emotional aspects of other planets, right? So Mars is anger.
Yeah.
I could see a Mercury retrograde hanging out with your Mars, sparking some anger management.
And it's about old
something.
stuff, because it's again that Mercury retrograde, the rethinking, the remembering, the going back to, if you have anything in your chart in Cancer, you can remember slights from 30 years ago. So those could all kind of bubble up during the Mercury retrograde times too. Let's revisit that. Oh, this is
Oh,
so
awesome.
great. Natalie says that she wants to make sure not to send in her voter registration until after the retrograde.
Good
idea.
call.
Yes, Natalie, thank you for that reminder.
Yes,
And it
that's a
ends
good
on the
Sag.
28th, so we're getting close.
Yeah. Well,
Sag tip.
Celeste, oh, I'm sorry, Marissa. Go ahead.
I was just saying, Natalie, giving a good Sag tip. Don't let your political activism get affected by this.
You must persevere, not be outwitted. But Celeste, what are you seeing? Because you work a lot with what we call mundane astrology, which is astrology of the world, of current events, of political things. What are you seeing with the Mercury retrograde that's interesting and standing out to you?
Yes, there will always be events. And I look to the day it starts, which was August 4th, the day it ends, and throughout. So I just pulled out several events that are in line with the transit. So I say Mercury retrograde is no joke. We also have to remember, as well as that, it can bring delays, conflicts, disagreements, and occurrences of previous situations and the collapse of anything contemplated. So we just need to remember that. So this on August 5th was the day of the women's gymnastics finals. And Mercury rules our thought processes. And Simone Biles, and I think it's Suni Lee, and I think there were others, fell off the balance beam. Was one of the things that happened. But even more importantly, Jordan Childs so what happened was that her coach challenged her scores, what I understand it as. And so then they revised it, a Mercury retrograde word that put it up, and she won the bronze medal. And then another team challenged, saying she didn't do it in the right amount of time. And Mercury was in Virgo, which is precise and specific and all of that. And so they reversed it. Mercury retrograde can bring reversals. And so they reversed it and said she had to give the medal back. And then they looked at the tape and said, oh, no, it was in time. But now there's this fight that's going to take years. And when it's potentially settled, notice if Mercury's retrograde at the time. So that's one we've seen at this time. Also, we found out that the Trump campaign's emails were stolen by Iran. So we are finding out that information, like secrets, can be revealed with Mercury retrogrades. And so there's secrets coming out.
Revealed.
Yeah, a funny one was Mercury retrograde in Aquarius. Aquarius rules technology. And that was back in the pandemic when we first went on Zoom. And do you remember the I am not a cat video where they show up in court? And one of the lawyers had a cat video. And it was like talking, and he couldn't figure out how to get it off of his computer.
Which is only an advantage as far as we're concerned. Yay, cat. Yeah.
So
oh, that's hilarious, though.
Retrograde in Aquarius rules technology, so a technology mishap. A more difficult one was for Jeffrey Toobin, who he wrote for the New Yorker and he was on CNN, and he was having a party with himself on Zoom, inappropriate
Right.
sex party with himself when Mercury was retrograde in Scorpio. And his fellow colleagues at the
Mm.
New Yorker all got to see this, and he got
Boy.
fired. So
Yeah, I
yeah, it
remember
was
that
like
now. I didn't remember it was in Scorpio. That's
it was in
hilarious.
Scorpio.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah. Um, and so sometimes this is why I recommend do not launch a big product or plan something big or when this is happening. Joe Biden announced his second term when Mercury was retrograde in Taurus, which is more
Mhm.
intimate to his chart because it was in his sixth house of like your day-to-day work. And it's the collapse of anything contemplated. And we know what happened with him. He
Yeah.
pulled out. So those are some real world examples
Those are
of
some good
Mercury.
examples.
Very,
Mhm.
very.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thank you.
Celeste.
LRTOT asked if you could talk just a little bit more about the shadow.
Oh, sure. What else?
Did we
What
talk
else?
about when it starts and how it's determined where it starts and that kind of thing?
Sure.
Or do you want me to?
Go ahead, Celeste. You can
Yeah,
take that one.
so when you're looking at the zodiac, it's 360 degrees. So the technical of the shadow is, so
Mhm.
let's just talk about now. So Mercury went retrograde at 4 Virgo, and it's backing it up to 21 Leo. So when it was direct, and we know it's an optical illusion, the retrograde, but when it passed 21 Leo going forward, that's when it entered its shadow. And then it flicks back, so it marches over the same territory 3 times. So it goes direct, reverse, direct. And that's why things from the past come up, or you think something's resolved and it's not, or
Mhm.
like secrets come out, that sort of thing. Yeah. And
Mhm.
so that's the pre-shadow. And then the post-shadow is till it gets back for Virgo.
Yeah.
So I just recommend, like, think about a week before, before, and a week
Mhm.
after if you don't
Yeah.
want to get that
Yeah.
detailed. Does that sound good to you guys, or would you say
Yeah, I
more
mean,
days?
I've been hearing, and yeah, that's definitely my understanding of the shadow. I was reading, there was some astrologer who I respect, whose name I don't remember, who was pretty much negating the whole shadow idea. And
Mm.
I don't feel strongly about it one way or another, but I don't know. It depends on the retrograde. Sometimes I feel like I really do experience it in advance. I think maybe some signs are more early starters too. If you
Uh-huh.
have Mercury going through something like Gemini or Aquarius or Sag, something that's or Aries, for goodness sake, that's very up and running. Yeah, we will definitely see that. with
This
them.
one with the Virgo, absolutely. I mean, but I felt it, of course,
I was
having
on
so much
vacation. I did not
Yeah,
experience
that's
it in the
nice.
least.
Yeah,
That was
that's good.
fantastic.
Good.
Yeah.
I had to
And
get a new
the other thing
mouse.
about the
Yeah.
pre-shadow that's good to mention is that when you're in the pre-shadow, you're getting a little bit of a sneak peek of what is going to come up for you
Mhm.
during the retrograde.
Right.
Not to freak out over, just more of a little heads up. You can think of it that way. And then in the post shadow, what would we say you're dealing with in the post shadow? Kind of reviewing what you've learned, perhaps during the retrograde.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. Because what you're doing there is you're catching up. You're just catching up with where it went retrograde. So, yeah, I think as Celeste said, it's just that whole period in there where Mercury's kind of covering the same territory a couple of times. It's really revealing. But yeah, like you said, if we start focusing too much on all the shadow and storm stuff, it seems to feel we're never out of a Mercury retrograde period. Maybe that's
Mm,
true. Maybe it's true. It
yeah.
certainly
Oh,
feels
we
that
didn't
way
get to
some
find the
days.
storm. The
Mm,
storm is the
Yeah.
day that it actually stations. Mercury actually goes retrograde or direct. And that's when
That's
you will feel it the most.
Mhm.
yeah, with all the
And
planets.
you know what
Definitely.
I'm doing? I've been preparing 2 talks, and
Mhm.
it's going so slowly. I'm behind. So it's really good to know to pad in extra time because your thought processes may slow down.
Good point. Yeah. Yeah.
Or like you're going to be delayed by other things, like April's talking about, all these tech things that pop up, or
Yeah.
depending on how it's hitting your chart, right? Maybe it's also interpersonal things that are coming up that are sidetracking you from this big work project that you thought you were going to hunker
Mhm.
down and tackle.
Yeah, because
So-
stuff comes up and it's inevitably, I don't know if you find this, Celeste, but when you're doing talks, it is inevitable that if I've given myself, okay, in the last week, I'll do this and this and this, and always something huge comes up. And I don't have the time to do it the way I want to do it. And I'm saying, I need another week. My husband says, you say that every time. And it really is true. But you're right. That's a good use of looking at the Mercury retrograde just to know what's coming up for you. Amanda says, a party with himself is my new favorite euphemism.
Oh, I love it.
That is a good one.
Good, Celeste. I like that.
Oh, he's partying with himself. That is so good. There she is.
Yeah.
It's
On
pretty
that
good.
note,
What's that?
I
Um,
said, does pop
yeah.
back on that note.
Hello.
Yes.
That was fantastic. So I think y'all answered most of the questions. I might just monopolize your time, since I'm never going to have this opportunity again to have 3 astrologers in my Zoom screen. But Rachel wanted to know, Maressa, what was the most surprising part of writing Mercury Magic?
Mm.
Ooh, I love that question. Most surprising part. I mean, just off the top of my head, I guess it was sort of like, speaking of mood and emotional and the lens through which we see Mercury retrograde, trying to be genuine in my treatment of it. You know, I am very optimistic and positive, and I want to cast almost everything I can in that light, but I also am a pragmatist, and I want to be honest. I wanted to be honest about how difficult these phases can be. So that perhaps was something that kind of like I was working with throughout the process. And this isn't related to Rachel's question, but I did just want to mention, because we haven't quite gotten to it yet, that it's very important to me that people know the book doesn't just cover Mercury retrograde. It also talks about your Mercury placement. So the sign that Mercury is in and the house that it's in, and what that means for you, and how you can work with that on your Mercury superpowers and your challenges to be an even more effective communicator and show up in your interactions with others and work, love, well-being, all of that in a more effective, empowered way.
You
And
did
I
a
think
great
it's just
job.
a really beautiful book. And it also gives a lot of information just about astrology in general.
Mhm.
Like gives you a nice overview of not just the signs, but the planets and the aspects. So
It's
really
small but mighty, this book. I
yeah,
mean,
small but
truly
mighty.
it is, because that
Just
is
like
a lot.
Mercury.
Yeah, small but mighty. You're quite right.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is an intro that covers just some basics of astrology if you are a beginner. So, yeah.
What
It
do
would be a
y'all think?
great book for anyone interested in
And
astrology.
it's such a beautiful book too. It's the actual like physical experience of the book is very pleasing.
It's very sparkly, and I
Yes.
like that. And the colors are
Oh,
very nice. It's a beautiful little book. I mean, you should be
yeah.
so proud. And
Thank
I'm happy to
you.
have it in my library
Oh,
to
I want to
refer
shout
to.
out to Rachel that she and I feel very grateful that I had her as a teammate in not only editing and creating the content of the book, but what you're talking about as well. We both advocated. It had a very different look initially. And it just didn't reflect the tone. You know, the tone is positive and trying to help people think about Mercury retrograde in a different, more optimistic way. And so I felt very passionate about it looking like that type of book.
Mhm.
I feel that we really did capture that. So I'm glad
Well,
that
Mercury is ignored a lot because it's small and it moves quickly. And the only press it gets is the negative press of the retrograde period. So I love that you devoted the whole book to it and took it really seriously and went in depth about it. Because it's a great planet. Where would we be without it? Without
Yeah.
communication?
Here
So
come my
yeah.
selfish questions.
Okay.
So a lot of people I know were born when Uranus was conjunct Mercury,
Okay.
Oh,
just coincidentally in their natal charts. What does that,
interesting.
yeah, what would you say about that in a natal chart?
What do
You
you
mean
think,
you just happen
Maressa?
to have found that in your friends that they have that in their
Uh-huh.
natal?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I would say that my interpretation of that is that these are future-minded thinkers, rule breakers. You know, think of Uranus, and Uranus is the planet of revolution, rebellion, innovation, and you pair that with Mercury, which is how you communicate and how you think. So they're kind of perhaps somewhat Aquarian in their communication style, because Uranus rules Aquarius. So
Be
Yeah, that
very
they kind of,
trend-setting.
oh, I'm sorry.
Trendsetters, thinking like pattern recognizers, trendsetters, maybe good for studying astrology.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, it almost gives it also like really, I wonder if they have to really focus on getting out of their head and back into their body, because Uranus is a higher octave of Mercury, and having them together could be like, boom, you're never, you're so busy thinking, it could bring a lot of
Yeah, it's
kinetic
very
energy.
inspiring. And you
Mhm.
get out of nowhere, you get this really interesting ideas and breakthroughs and things. But it does sort of give you a mind. It's almost like we were saying about Mercury retrograde, that not everybody's on your wavelength and they don't get it. But I mean, Mercury moves quickly, so it would only be close to Uranus just a few days out of each year. So you've just kind of connected with, they're just like in your age group, maybe, or something. But
Strange.
I'd love it. I would love to have that conjunction because it keeps you from getting stale, especially if you're a writer or something. I mean, can you imagine how fabulous? Because if you're just, I can't think of a new idea to save my life. Mercury, Uranus never has that problem. They have nothing but new ideas.
I would say they're probably like they're inventors. They come up with really brilliant technology-based
Mm-hmm.
newfangled ideas.
Do you how do you so the idea of the four dignities of planets, exalted, detriment, domicile, fall, is that really important when it comes to Mercury placements in natal charts for y'all?
Do you guys have, well, you have Mercury in its domicile in Virgo.
Right. And exalted, I have.
Yeah, I don't know about that. That seems like cheating. How do you, well, anyhow, that's what they say, but it's a super strong sign for Mercury for sure.
Yeah, I think we think of it more, I don't know. I won't speak for April and Celeste, but I think of it more as I in my writing I will mention the dignities if it feels really relevant to, like, I'm thinking about when I write about new moons, full moons, and other and the chart of those lunar events, mentioning that perhaps if, oh, it's connecting with Venus and Venus is in Scorpio. I think I'm working ahead on things, you know, for later in the year. And I was writing about Venus and Scorpio, and Venus in Scorpio is in its fall. So, you know, it might add an element of relationship struggles coming up more readily. And so, you know, in terms of that, but I don't put too much weight on it, and I wouldn't worry somebody telling them about their chart like, you have this in its fall, you know?
Well, a fellow astrologer that I think a lot of has always said that she thinks planets in their detriment and fall end up being more pronounced in your character because you have to work so hard to express the energy of that planet through the difficult signs. Depending on what you read, I've got mine in fall in Leo. because some say that Mercury is exalted in Aquarius. And I can kind of relate to that in that Mercury in it, the reasoning behind it is Mercury in Leo would be very subjective. It would only see things from its own point of view, which is not ideal for Mercury.
Right.
You know, and Mercury in Pisces, which would be in its detriment. That would be we see the haziness of that. But it's very imaginative. It's very creative and poetic. And so there are strengths to all of them. I think the dignities, Celeste, tell me if you think this is true. I think that we really look at the dignities more in certain kinds of astrology, in horary, in electional, even maybe in rectification, because it just means without any value judgment about it in a chart of a person, a planet has these strengths or challenges. And that's where you see that stuff come up, is in the less personal styles of astrology, I think.
Yes, it's really important in horary, which is someone asks an astrologer a question and they cast a chart in the moment that answers the question, says what happened most recently, what's likely to happen next, and it describes the people involved. And if someone's in dignity or at their home sign, that suggests, like, say you were, should I hire Pete or whatever, that it suggests Pete is going to be able to do the job well and with ease. If it's exalted, oh, someone may have recommended the person, or they may potentially think more of their abilities than they actually are.
Never.
If it's in fall, it could be a struggle to teach them the job. In detriment, they may never learn. So it has meaning in more meaning in like the techniques April was mentioning. But
I call Rachel a lot. Maybe I should change my name. I really do. It's weird.
do you get Rachel a lot?
I do. Do I look like a Rachel? I think maybe.
No, I don't know where that came
Rachel.
from.
It happens. It's happened several times. Yeah.
Oh, maybe a past life.
Weird.
Ooh, maybe I was. Maybe I'm a past Rachel. I don't have the hairdo for it though. So
yeah, but in your own chart, like you learn to adjust to the energy over time. Like maybe if it's in domicile, you just have an ease with communication. Yeah. Maybe in fall, like like you learned how, maybe if you have Mercury in Pisces, it took a little longer for you to be able to communicate in a way where others could understand you rather than it sounding, like you talk gibberish a little longer as it
it's like the grown-up voices on Peanuts, like wah, 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 wah.
Yeah.
But
They're also poets.
What?
Mercury and Pisces, they're also poets, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because they don't know any the thing is you don't know any different than your own chart. And you say, you just adjust to it. And people say, oh, that must be really hard having that in your chart. You go, I mean, you don't know any different. It's like having red hair or, a talent for music or something. You don't know any different. So you figure it out for sure.
Is the midheaven important in a chart?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, it's very, very important.
I mentioned to you in the green room that I have a North Node in Leo, and you asked if I had anything else in Leo. I said no, but then I realized, no, my midheaven is there. They're conjunct.
Oh, that's wonderful.
What's the midheaven about? I've never really hear about that
a
in
career point. It's the point of highest visibility because it represents the highest point in the chart, the highest point in the sky. So it's where we're recognized. It's the reputation that precedes us. And most commonly, it's referred to as a career point for those reasons. Now, it's not always your job, but it would be, this is the thing you are called to do. This is the thing you will be recognized for in the world. So it just says, good luck in your career. The North Node's a good luck point, but you have to be brave enough to reach out for it because it always represents what's a little unfamiliar and feels a little scary.
You're supposed to show up and be seen in your career with Leo on that midheaven. Maybe be a leader, creative. These are all Leo things. Be bold at times.
Scary things.
Leo midheaven.
Oh, well, just
love
a quick note on what we were talking about before with like, you only know your own Mercury, right? And that's what's familiar to you. There's a resource in Mercury Magic where you can look at compatibility between your Mercury and another person's Mercury. And I also encourage readers to move through the book, perhaps with a loved one or a friend who they cross wires with often, so that you can better understand your own Mercury and how you communicate, as well as theirs, perhaps, and understand, oh, well, look at these are their superpowers. These are their challenges.
That's the great joy of astrology and looking at relationships. It's just you understand more and more keenly. Yeah, well, that's how they're built. They're not built like me.
Yeah.
Laura has one last question. She says, any advice for the last few days of Mercury retrograde, Maressa?
Good one. Good
How
one.
do we survive?
Oh man.
Look at her. She's like, don't ask me.
I mean, well, it's in Leo, right? And we were gonna we could quickly talk about the themes, perhaps, of Mercury retrograde in Leo. I
Mhm.
think I like to talk about how Leo excels at teaching about self-love, and nurturing your self-image and your confidence. And so perhaps you could devote a little bit of extra time to tending to your inner child around those subjects. That's some self-reflective, meditative, Mercury retrograde-esque work that could be done before this Mercury retrograde is over.
It sounds good.
Mhm.
And maybe do something creative, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe if you're a person who started some creative project months ago and then you ran out of time to do anything with it, maybe try picking it up, taking it just a little bit further. You might finish it or you might not, but it's worth revisiting. It's a great time for writers because it's the great time to go back to the stuff you started and didn't finish, and you can purloin it for current projects. It's the reuse thing, because there could be stuff in here where the entire project didn't really work for you, but there are pieces of it that are just brilliant. So yeah.
Saw something online recently where a writer was talking about their compost pile. So anything they ever cut from anything they wrote, they just drop into this zombie Word document, and it's their compost pile.
I
So-
love that.
So they revisit it every so often. They're like, oh man, this was really good. This has been sitting and ripening in my compost. I'm going to take this and use it elsewhere.
I love that.
I
That
love
is
that
so
too.
that's a good Mercury retrograde tip. Ooh.
Very
I just
good.
ran across a quote. It's like from Plato or something. But the quote is, you never walk into the same river twice, because the river's not the same and neither are you. And I think that's what happens when we go back to our old stuff and we say, oh my gosh, that was really good. Why did I drop that? Or we go, I can totally see why I dropped that. But with the benefit of that distance, sometimes you can really tell.
Yes.
But if people do any journaling or just listen to old music they like or go to a show or
I
whatever.
think it's a great time to watch a movie that you love with
Mhm.
Mercury's retrograde
Yes.
in Leo, because Leo rules performers. So I watched The Sixth Sense again recently, which is one of my
Oh.
all-time favorites.
It's good to go back to that old stuff. We just watched No Country for Old Men or something,
Oh,
just
great
something that was
movie.
old we hadn't seen in a really long time. And I'm surprised with advancing age how little I remember about most of these movies. So it's just like, watching something new is great. I'm with Celeste on that. Or rereading a favorite book. I have a book I read
Yeah.
every summer. And so I hadn't had time, so I caught up with that. So it was
Which one?
Oh, it's by Ann Tyler. It's called Ladder
Yeah.
of Years. It's my favorite Ann Tyler novel. So
Oh,
I
beautiful.
reread
Ladder
that
of
every
Years?
summer. Yeah.
That's nice.
Oh, Celeste, it's wonderful. It's so
Okay, I've read
wonderful.
some of her stuff. I'll have to check it out.
Love all her books. So
I have a craving to watch Dirty Dancing before the summer's
really,
out, because it's such a summer
Perfect.
movie and it's one of my top movies of all time. My husband and I just did a little challenge. We created our top 10 movie lists together.
oh, I would love to see yours. You have to send it to me.
I will. And then he was like, let's play a game and we'll try to guess each other's. And I did such a good
Oh.
job with it. job with mine.
You didn't do well with yours. Oh
I was like,
no.
apparently we need to watch more of my favorite movies.
Evidently, Kyle. Come on. Oh, that's funny. How cute.
That's adorable.
Dirty Dancing, I think, is my number 2.
I love
That's
that.
number 1.
Back to the Future.
Oh, really? Oh, well, that's a charming one.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
Good wholesome family fun. Very good.
I could personally keep plying you with questions for many, many days and many hours, but I guess we'll wrap up. I will ask y'all what the best way for viewers to keep up with you is, whether by social media or newsletter or podcast, or please tell us.
I have a newsletter. If you go to astrologybyceleste.com, you can sign up and get my free guide about setting intentions with the moon cycle. The podcast is Celestial Insights, and I'm at Astrology by Celeste on all the socials. Instagram is my main platform.
Yep. And I'm at bigskyAstrology.com, and people can sign up for my newsletter. There's a little box that says subscribe, and you get my monthly workbook, my moon workbook that's new each month, and all kinds of fun little things I send out. I'm on social reluctantly, so I'm there. But really, my newsletter's really, I think, where it's at with following me. So I hope people will come by and take a look.
April and everybody, both Celeste and April's content and writing is so wonderful. Please follow them. And
Oh, you're very sweet. Thank
their
you.
newsletters. And I'm at maressabrown.com, and maressa.brown on Instagram is primarily where I do my social media. I am working on my newsletter, perhaps something that I'll be able to get to on my maternity leave. We'll see. Little Miss Overly Ambitious Virgo over here.
You've been a little busy. You have been a little busy. You'll get there, my dear.
Yeah. And you can, of course, purchase Mercury Magic through Warwick's, please, or again, wherever fine books are sold.
And your other book, Raising Baby by the Stars, which is
Raising
lovely.
Baby by the Stars,
Just wonderful.
which is now coming into actual fruition.
The book was just a little bit ahead of you, but now you're growing into the book.
Yeah.
Oh, your first baby?
My first baby's on the
Oh my
way. I was
gosh.
telling us about your astrology. I was thinking that's funny because my daughter will be either very Libra or very Scorpio, or it's a little bit up in the air right now. We'll see, but she's due in October.
Yay.
That is so cool. Gosh, I'm so curious how you're going to balance knowing so much about this person and also letting them be their own person once they're out.
I'm
sure you'll do an amazing job.
Oh, thank you. I think, well, my mom said something really sweet. She said that I'm going to know more about my child than a lot of people know about their 20-year-olds, and that awareness, I mean, that's what I talk about in Raising Baby. I think that as long as you, again, don't take it too far, like you're saying, right, Amanda, but just some awareness of this little person's needs and perspective can really make a difference. I hope so.
I always just feel like if I were having a baby and people say, oh, I don't want to know the gender, and I'm thinking, I want to know everything about this person I can possibly know going in. So it's great that you have astrology to help you do that.
Yes,
Congratulations.
It's such a wonderful tool.
A
Thank
friend of mine
you.
told me they just had a breed reveal party for their dog as opposed to a gender reveal. There could also be astrology reveals when you find out your
That's so
baby's due
funny.
date.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Here's the
People-
chart.
Although the due date is so not. So
We
I
don't
just texted
know.
my husband the other day when I got more news about when our baby might or might not come. I was like, we know nothing. So let's
I
just
say, look for the chart that has that Mercury with Uranus or something, because this one's keeping you guessing.
yeah.
Hard to nail it down and figure out exactly what's going to happen. But, well, it's going to be lovely one way or another.
Absolutely.
You all so very much, and thank you to everyone who joined us. And
Thank
get your
you.
copy of Mercury Magic and follow all these amazing astrologers.
Yeah.
Yes, and yeah,
Thank you. This has been
Thank you
great.
for-
Amanda.
excitement from all these women. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you
Have
so much for having
Have
us.
a good night. You're
Thank you,
almost through
Maressa
this
and
Mercury
April. It was
retrograde.
so good to see you all.
Woohoo! Bye.
Thanks. Bye.